Odysseus stands in the heart of the den, the scent of cedar and honeyed wine cloying in his nostrils. The cup lies shattered on the stone floor, its dregs hissing like a dying viper. He does not feel the coarse hair sprouting from his skin. His spine does not lengthen. He is still a man, still the King of Ithaca. But the woman before him, the golden-haired weaver of nightmares, stares with eyes that have seen eras pass. She has struck him with her wand, yet he remains upright. Is his soul forged of a substance a goddess cannot melt? The sea had been a cruel mistress. After the fires of Troy and the crushing boulders of the Laestrygonians, the world had shrunk to a single deck. Only one ship remained. Odysseus, whose name was once synonymous with the fall of empires, now led a crew of ghosts, shattered men who looked at the horizon with eyes that expected only death. When the wooded shores of Aeaea rose from the mist, there was no cheering. There was only the heavy splash of oars and the salt-crusted silence of the exhausted. They landed on a beach that felt too still. Odysseus climbed a rocky height and saw it, a thin ribbon of smoke rising from the dense forest, a hearthfire calling from the center of the isle. It was a signal of civilization, or perhaps a lure for the desperate. He knew that a leader who sends his men into every shadow will soon find himself leading corpses. He split the company into two groups. Eurylochus, a man of caution, took 22 men toward the smoke. Odysseus remained by the black hull, watching the sun paint the Aegean in colors of bruised plum and cooling blood. The hours bled into a long, agonizing afternoon. Then, a single figure emerged from the emerald gloom. It was Eurylochus, stumbling, his face a mask of primal terror. He could not speak at first. His hands clawed at the air, trying to describe a horror that had no shape. He told of a house of polished stone, of wolves and lions that did not bite, but fawned like lonely dogs. He spoke of a woman whose voice was a silver thread. He told of a feast, a potion, and then a sudden, sickening end. The men were gone. Odysseus did not hesitate. His men expected him to flee, but the king felt only a cold friction in his chest, the grinding of duty against the instinct to survive. He slung his silver-studded bronze sword over his shoulder and took up his great bow. Eurylochus begged him to cut the cables and run, but Odysseus saw a tactical problem to be solved. To bring more men was to provide more livestock for the slaughter. He would go alone. He stepped into the trees, the ground soft with rotting leaves, his mind weaving paths through the coming confrontation. Deep in the gloom, a shadow detached itself from the ancient oaks. It was Hermes, the wayfinder, holding a golden wand. The god spoke of the Moly, a plant that grows where the divine and the mortal intersect. Odysseus watched as the god pulled a flower with a blossom white as milk and a root black as a moonless night. The gods can pull it up. Hermes, but for men, it is hard. He gave the root to the king, a physical countermeasure against the rot of Circe's magic, a secret weight against his heart. Hermes warned him, when she strikes with her wand, do not recoil. Draw the sword and rush her as if to kill. And when she offers her bed, do not refuse, but bind her with the great oath of the gods. The house of Circe rose from the clearing like a monument to a forgotten age. As Odysseus approached, the wolves and lions of the mountain began to circle. He saw their eyes, human eyes, trapped behind golden irises, weeping with the memory of voices. He walked through them as if he were their master, hand tight on his sword. The doors swung open with a sound like a long held. There stood the daughter of Helios, her hair a cascade of sunlight, her robes the color of the sea at dawn. She smiled, but it was the smile of a fisherman watching the net close. "Welcome, traveler," she said, her voice a vibration that struck directly at his pulse. She led him to a throne of silver nails and brought a golden cup. Inside, the wine was dark, laced with the herbs of forgetfulness and the venom of the soul. Odysseus sat and waited. He felt the weight of the Moly against his ribs, a cold anchor in a rising tide of enchantment. He drank. The wine was sweet, the taste of a life without struggle, a life of soft edges and no memory of Ithaca's rocky soil. Circe struck. The wand thudded against his shoulder. "Go to the sty," she cried, her voice turning sharp and cruel. "Wallow with your friends. Lose the name of man." The magic hit him like a physical blow, a wave of heat that tried to liquefy his bones and shroud his mind. But the Moly held. The black root in his tunic grew cold, freezing the transformation in its tracks. His skin remained smooth. His mind remained sharp. Odysseus lunges. The bronze sword cleared the scabbard with a hiss. He was across the floor before she could breathe, pinning her against the stone, the cold edge of his blade biting into her throat. Circe screamed, a sound of pure shock. She had turned heroes into swine for centuries, and never has the clay of humanity refused her touch. She fell to her knees, clutching his legs. "Who are you?" she gasps. "Your mind is a citadel that will not fall." She realized this was the man the prophecy spoke of, the one who would return from Troy with the cunning of a god. He forced her to swear the unbreakable vow that she would work no more mischief. Only then did he sheathe the bronze. Circe led him to the styes. With a flick of her hand, the great, bristling boars began to change. The hair falls away. They rose, taller than before, weeping as they embraced their king. The aftermath was not a quick departure. For a full year, the ship sat on the beach while the men lived in the halls of the witch. They feasted on meat and slept in soft beds. To the world, they were guests. To Odysseus, it was a study in the erosion of the soul. He watched his warriors grow soft. He saw the calluses on their hands fade. He saw the memory of Ithaca, of wives and sons and duties, begin to dissolve like a mirage. The golden cage was more dangerous than the sty. Odysseus lived as the lover of a goddess, eating the food of immortals, but his heart remained a jagged stone. He had mastered the magic, but he found that the greatest cunning is required to remember who you are when the world wants you to forget. He felt the weight of his years and the heavy burden of a man who has looked into the eyes of a god and seen only his own reflection. He had saved his men's bodies, but their spirits had become addicted to the ease of the island. He learned that the Moly was a metaphor for the spirit. The black root is the suffering we endure. The white flower is the beauty we strive for. What carried him through was his refusal to surrender his identity to the comfort of the cage. He forced Circe to let them go, to point the way toward the next terror. The ship pulls away from Aeaea. Odysseus stands at the stern, older and more lined. He has reclaimed his men, but the silence between them is deeper than the sea itself. History remembers Odysseus for his many travels and his clever tongue. But in the trial of the Witch of Aeaea, he learned that a man's true form is not dictated by his skin, but by his refusal to let go of the struggle. The smoke of Aeaea fades, but the shadows of the underworld reach out to claim the next chapter. A descent into the dark awaits. Walk with us through the old stories. Subscribe to Saga Weaver, where ancient warriors face impossible choices